In a move that stunned the racing world, seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton announced he's giving away his entire salary, a staggering £40 million. While fans and media scramble for answers, the real reason behind this unprecedented act of generosity has remained a closely guarded secret. Until now. Behind the headlines lies an extraordinary tale of a childhood promise, a debt that can never truly be repaid, and a life-or-death moment that no one knew about until today. This is the untold story of why the world's greatest racing driver gave away everything, and the shocking truth that connects him to a boy who never got his chance. Rain tapped against the windows of the Mercedes headquarters in Brackley, England. Outside, dark clouds hung low in the sky. Inside, hundreds of reporters packed the room, their cameras ready. Something big was about to happen. Lewis Hamilton walked onto the stage wearing a simple black suit. No fancy jewelry today. No colorful outfit. Just Lewis, looking serious and calm. The seven-time Formula One world champion took his place behind the microphone and waited for the room to quiet down. "Thank you all for coming today," Lewis said, his voice steady but soft. Camera flashes lit up his face as he looked down at his notes. Then he put the paper aside and looked up. "I've been racing since I was 8 years old. Racing has given me everything. Amazing experiences, wonderful friends, and yes, a good living." He paused and took a deep breath. "Today, I want to give something back." The room was silent now. Even the rain seemed to pause. "I've decided to give away my entire salary for this season," Lewis announced. The silence broke. Reporters jumped to their feet. Questions flew from every direction. "All of it? How much money is that? Why, Lewis?" Lewis raised his hands, asking for quiet. His team boss, Toto Wolff, sat nearby, looking as surprised as everyone else. This wasn't in the team's planned announcement. "Yes, all of it," Lewis continued. "Every pound, every penny. My full driver's salary for this season, around £40 million. Gasps filled the room. Even for a Formula One champion, that was a massive amount of money. "But why?" shouted a reporter from the front row. Lewis smiled, for the first time since walking on stage. It was a small smile, like he knew a secret. "You'll understand soon enough," he said. "All I can say today is that some promises need to be kept, no matter how long ago they were made." More questions came, but Lewis wouldn't say more about his reasons. He only added, "This isn't about getting attention or looking good. This is personal." As Lewis finished speaking, phones lit up around the room. The news was already spreading worldwide. Lewis Hamilton, one of the highest-paid athletes on the planet, was giving away his entire salary. And nobody knew why. Toto Wolff joined Lewis at the microphone, putting his hand on the driver's shoulder. This came as a surprise to the team as, "Well," Toto admitted, "but we support Lewis in this decision, even if we don't fully understand it yet." After the press conference, Lewis walked quickly to a private room, avoiding more questions. His phone buzzed non-stop with messages from other drivers, friends, and family. A text from his father, Anthony, simply read, "You sure about this, son?" Lewis typed back, "Never been more sure, Dad." Outside the Mercedes building, fans had already gathered despite the rain. They held signs supporting Lewis. Some cried, touched by his generosity, even without knowing his reasons. Not everyone was so positive. On social media, some people called it a publicity stunt. Others said he must be doing it for tax reasons. A few racing experts wondered if Lewis was planning to retire and wanted attention. During a press event in Italy, Max Verstappen, Lewis's biggest rival on the track, seemed confused by the news. "It's very generous, of course," Max told reporters, "but it seems out of character. The Lewis I know on track is super competitive and focused on winning. This is different." Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari driver, was more supportive. "Lewis has always cared about things beyond racing. If he's doing this, he must have a good reason." Back at his apartment in Monaco that night, Lewis sat alone looking at the dark Mediterranean Sea. His phone had finally stopped buzzing. He opened a worn photo album and turned to a specific page. The picture showed two young boys at a go-kart track, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning widely. Lewis touched the face of the other boy. "Soon," he whispered. The next morning, Lewis surprised his team by arriving early at the factory. Engineers and mechanics stopped their work to watch him walk by. Some wanted to ask about the announcement, but nobody dared. "Morning, everyone," Lewis said cheerfully. "Beautiful day to make a race car go faster, isn't it?" His race engineer, Peter Bono Bonington, met him in the simulator room. "You've caused quite a stir," Bono said. "That was kind of the point," Lewis replied with a grin. "The team's behind you," Bono assured him, "but people are confused." Lewis nodded. "They won't be soon enough. For now, let's focus on winning the E-Quai. Next race, shall we?" As Lewis started the simulator, Toto Wolff watched from the doorway. Something had changed in his star driver. Behind the familiar smile and focus was a new sense of purpose, something beyond championships and race wins. Toto's phone rang. It was the team's main sponsor, concerned about Lewis's announcement and what it might mean. "I assure you, Lewis is more committed than ever," Toto told them. "Whatever he's planning, I believe it will be something extraordinary." As Toto spoke, Lewis hit a perfect lap time in the simulator, faster than he'd ever gone before. There was a fire in him now, a mission beyond racing, and soon the world would understand why Lewis Hamilton gave away £40 million. But not yet. Not until he was ready to share the promise he'd kept hidden for 25 years. That night, as Lewis stared out the window of his Monaco apartment, his mind drifted back to where it all began. Stevenage, England, 1990. 8-year-old Lewis. Hamilton bounced in the passenger seat of his dad's old Vauxhall Cavalier. Today was race day, and Lewis couldn't sit still. "Calm down, champ," Anthony Hamilton laughed, his eyes tired from working his night shift job. "Save that energy for the track." "I can't help it, Dad," Lewis said, clutching his helmet. "I'm gonna win today. I can feel it." The Rye House kart circuit came into view. It wasn't fancy, just an asphalt track with old tires as barriers. But to young Lewis, it was better than any place in the world. Anthony parked next to much nicer cars, BMWs and Mercedes owned by other racing families. Their karts were newer too, with shiny paint and the latest parts. Lewis's kart was second-hand, painted by Anthony himself after his regular job. "Remember," Anthony said, kneeling to look Lewis in the eyes, "it's not about having the best kart. It's about being the best driver." "I know, Dad," Lewis nodded seriously. As they unloaded the cart, Lewis noticed a boy about his age watching from the fence. He had curly brown hair and wore a faded Ferrari t-shirt that was too big for him. The boy wasn't with any team or family. He was just watching. During practice laps, Lewis kept seeing the boy. While other kids ignored him, Lewis waved each time he passed. After his final practice lap, the fastest of any driver that day, Lewis drove over to where his dad was timing him. "Dad, who's that boy by the fence?" Lewis asked. Anthony looked over. "Don't know, son. First time I've seen him here." Lewis made a decision. He took off his helmet and walked over to the fence. "Hi, I'm Louis. Do you like racing?" The boy nodded shyly. "I'm Zach. I love racing. I watch all the Formula One races on TV." "Me too," Louis said. "Senna's my favorite. Who's yours?" "Senna too." Zach smiled for the first time. "Do you race?" Louis asked. Zach's smile faded. "No. My mom says it's too expensive. She's raising me by herself and says we need food more than racing." Louis looked back at his dad, who was checking the cart's engine. He knew his dad worked 3 jobs to pay for his racing: as a manager at a rail company during the day, IT contractor in the evenings, and even putting up for sale signs on weekends. "Want to try my cart?" Louis offered suddenly. Zach's eyes widened. "Really? But what about your race?" "I have time before the final." "Come on!" Louis brought Zach over to meet his dad. Anthony Hamilton looked surprised but smiled warmly. "Dad, this is Zach. He's never raced before. Can I let him try my cart, please?" Anthony hesitated. "Louis, if anything happens to the cart before your race, I'll be super careful, sir," Zach promised, his eyes pleading. Anthony looked at the boy's worn sneakers and too big shirt. Something in his eyes softened. "All right then. 1 lap. Louis, show him how the controls work." For the next 15 minutes, Louis taught Zach how to drive the cart. Zach was a natural. By his 3rd practice lap, he was taking corners like someone who'd been racing for years. "You're really good," Louis said when Zach returned, his face glowing with joy. "That was the best thing ever," Zach breathed, carefully removing the borrowed helmet. When race time came, Zach cheered louder than anyone as Louis won 1st place. Afterward, they sat sharing Louis's victory snack, a chocolate bar Anthony had bought to celebrate. "Will you come back next weekend?" Louis asked. Zach shook, his head sadly. "My mom works weekends. I snuck out today while she was sleeping. She worked night shift at the hospital." "Oh," Louis said, disappointed. "But we could be friends anyway. Where do you live?" "Fairlands, by the big park." "That's near us," Louis said excitedly. "We live on Peartree Way." As they were talking, a worried-looking woman rushed into the track area. "Zachary James Taylor! I've been looking everywhere for you!" Zach jumped up. "That's my mom. I gotta go. I'm probably in big trouble." Before running off, Zach turned to Louis. "Thanks for letting me drive your cart. It was the best day of my life." Louis watched his new friend leave with his mother, who was scolding him while also hugging him tight. That night at home, Louis lay in bed thinking about Zach. Their small house on Peartree Way wasn't fancy, but Louis knew they were luckier than some. His dad worked so hard to give him this chance to race. Anthony came in to say goodnight, still wearing his uniform from his evening job. "Dad, why can't Zach race too? He's really good." Anthony sat on the edge of the bed. "Racing costs a lot of money, Louis. Not every family can afford it." "But that's not fair," Louis said. "If someone is good at something, they should get to do it." "Life isn't always fair, son," Anthony said softly. "That's why we have to be grateful for what we have." Later that night, Louis stood on a chair to look out his window at the stars. He made a quiet promise. "One day, when I'm a famous racer, I'll make sure everyone gets a chance, even if they don't have much money." Over the next few years, Louis kept an eye out for Zach at the track, but never saw him again. As Louis won race after race, moving up to bigger carts and more important competitions, he often thought about the boy with natural talent who never got his chance. Anthony worked harder than ever, sometimes sleeping only 4 hours a night between jobs. Louis knew every trophy he won was really his dad's trophy too. When Lewis was 12, he signed with McLaren's Young Driver program. Ron Dennis, the McLaren boss, had spotted his talent. Life was about to change for the Hamilton family, but even as opportunities opened up for Lewis, he never forgot his promise under the stars, or the boy named Zach, who could have been a champion too. The years flew by like race laps for Lewis Hamilton. From karting circuits to Formula Renault, from Formula 3 to GP2, Lewis won at every level. His natural talent, combined with the hard work his father had taught him, made him nearly unbeatable. At 17, Lewis stood on the podium after winning the British Formula Renault Championship. As cameras flashed, he spotted a boy about 10 years old watching from behind the barriers. The boy's eyes were wide with wonder, just like Zach's had been years ago. After the ceremony, Lewis walked over to the boy. "Do you race?" Lewis asked. The boy shook his head. "We can't afford it. But I want to more than anything." Lewis felt that familiar tug in his chest. He signed a poster for the boy and said, "Don't give up on your dream." That night, Lewis called his dad. "I saw another kid today, Dad, like Zach. So much talent going to waste because of money." Anthony sighed. "I know, son. That's why we worked so hard to get you where you are. So you can change things someday." By 2006, Lewis was racing in GP2, just one step below Formula One. He was winning races in spectacular fashion, making moves other drivers wouldn't dare try. Team owners from F1 started noticing the young British driver. But racing at this level was incredibly expensive. Even with McLaren's support, the costs were enormous. Lewis saw talented drivers drop out every season because they ran out of money. Some were faster than him, but it didn't matter. In racing, talent wasn't always enough. During a rainy race weekend in Barcelona, Lewis sat in the garage watching mechanics work on his car. Next to him was his teammate, a rich kid whose father owned a chain of hotels. "My dad's buying me a Ferrari for my birthday," the teammate bragged. "What was your first car?" Lewis thought of his dad's old Vauxhall. "Nothing fancy," he said quietly. That night, Lewis couldn't sleep. He got up and wrote in his journal, "When I make it to F1, I need to remember where I came from. Not everyone gets the chances I've had. Someday, I'll find a way to fix that." In 2007, Lewis's dream came true. McLaren signed him for Formula One, the highest level of racing in the world. At just 22 years old, he would race alongside world champion Fernando Alonso. No one expected much from a rookie, but Lewis shocked everyone. In his very first race in Australia, he finished on the podium. Then he did it again. And again. Soon, Lewis wasn't just keeping up with the veterans, he was beating them. After winning the Canadian Grand Prix, his first F1 victory, Lewis called his dad. "We did it, Dad," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "You did it, son," Anthony corrected him. "I just helped you get started." Lewis shook his head, even though his dad couldn't see it over the phone. "No, we did it. Every lap I drive, you're there with me." As Lewis became a star, his life changed dramatically. He moved to Switzerland, then Monaco. He started earning more money than he'd ever dreamed possible. He bought fancy cars and clothes. Famous people wanted to be his friend, but sometimes, late at night, Lewis would think about Stevenage and the kids like Zach who never got their shot. He'd look at his racing trophies and wonder if someone more deserving might have won them if they'd just had the chance to try. In 2008, after a nail-biting season that came down to the final corner of the final race in Brazil, Lewis won his first world championship. At 23, he was the youngest champion in F1 history. Standing on the podium, spraying champagne, Lewis felt on top of the world. But later that night, alone in his hotel room, he felt strangely empty. He'd achieved his childhood dream, but something was missing. He thought about the promise he'd made under the stars years ago. He hadn't forgotten, but he hadn't fulfilled it either. Not yet. The years that followed brought challenges. Lewis struggled with an underperforming McLaren car. In 2013, he made a bold move to Mercedes, a team that wasn't winning races at the time. People called it a mistake. But Lewis saw something in Mercedes that others missed. Together, they built a racing dynasty. From 2014 onward, Lewis and Mercedes dominated Formula One. More championships followed: 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Lewis broke record after record. With each victory, his bank account grew larger. He became one of the highest-paid athletes in the world. He could afford anything he wanted. Yet every time he visited a racetrack and saw children watching from the sidelines, Lewis remembered his promise. He started small programs to help young drivers, but it never felt like enough. One night in 2021, after tying Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world championships, Lewis sat alone on his balcony in Monaco. The moon reflected on the Mediterranean sea, reminding him of the stars above Stevenage all those years ago. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" Lewis answered cautiously. "Lewis Hamilton?" asked a man's voice. "You probably don't remember me, but my name is Zach Taylor. We met at Rye House Kart Circuit when we were kids." Lewis's heart stopped. After all these years, Zach had found him, and it was time to keep his promise. "Zach?" Lewis whispered into the phone. "Zach Taylor? From the kart track?" "Yes," the voice replied. "I can't believe you remember me." "Of course I do," Lewis said, his mind racing back to that day at Rye House. "How did you get my number?" Zach laughed softly. "It wasn't easy. I work as an engineer now, not for a racing team, for a company that makes medical equipment. But I've followed your whole career." Lewis sat down on his balcony chair, stunned. "We should meet. Are you still in England?" "Yes, still in Stevenage, actually. But I'm calling about something important, something you need to know." Before Zach could continue, Lewis heard a beep on the line, his team manager calling. "Zach, I have to take this other call. It's my team. Can I call you back in 5 minutes?" "Sure," Zach said. "This number works." Lewis switched calls, handling a quick question about the next day's press conference. When he tried calling Zach back, the call went straight to voicemail. He left a message, but Zach didn't call back that night, or the next day, or the day after that. The number, when Lewis tried to trace it, belonged to a prepaid phone that was no longer active. Had he imagined it? No, the call had been real. But why would Zach call after all these years, only to disappear again? As the 2021 season continued, Lewis couldn't stop thinking about Zach. Between races, he secretly hired a private investigator to find Zachary Taylor from Stevenage. But there were many Zachary Taylors, and without more information, the search hit dead ends. On the track, Lewis was as brilliant as ever. He battled fiercely with Max Verstappen all season, pushing himself to the limit. The championship came, down to the final race in Abu Dhabi, a controversial finish that saw Max crowned champion instead of Lewis. Many expected Lewis to be angry, to protest. Instead, he showed grace in defeat, congratulating Max. Behind his calm exterior, Lewis was thinking about things bigger than trophies. During the off-season, Lewis retreated to his home in Colorado. There, surrounded by mountains and silence, he reflected on his career. 7 world championships, Record-breaking wins, fame and fortune beyond what that little boy from Stevenage could have imagined. Yet something still felt incomplete. One snowy morning, Lewis sat by the fireplace, looking through old photos on his laptop. He clicked through images of his early, racing days, smiling at pictures of himself and his dad working on karts together. Then he stopped. In the background of one photo from Rye House, barely visible near the fence, was a boy in an oversized Ferrari t-shirt. Zach Lewis stared at the grainy image. He'd carried the memory of that day for over 25 years, but seeing Zach's face again made his promise feel more real than ever. "I never kept my word," Lewis whispered to himself. Yes, he'd donated to charities. He'd spoken up about diversity in racing. But he hadn't truly opened doors for kids like Zach. Talented kids who couldn't afford to race. When the 2022 season began, something had changed in Lewis. His team noticed it first. He seemed more focused, more determined, but also more at peace. When asked what was different, Lewis just smiled and said, "I'm seeing the bigger picture now." Lewis won his 8th championship that year, breaking Michael Schumacher's record to become the most successful Formula One driver of all time. Standing on the podium in Brazil, the same country where he'd won his first title, Lewis looked out at the crowd and felt a wave of gratitude. For his father's sacrifices, for Ron Dennis taking a chance on him, for Mercedes believing in him, for all the people who had made his journey possible. In his victory speech, Lewis said something that puzzled fans and media alike. "This championship isn't mine alone. It also belongs to those who never got their chance. And I promise that's about to change." Reporters asked what he meant, but Lewis wouldn't explain further. Back in his Monaco apartment after the season ended, Lewis looked at his collection of trophies. 8 world championships, 103 race wins, countless poles and podiums. His racing legacy was secure. But what about his human legacy? Lewis picked up his phone and called his financial advisor. "James, I've been thinking, how much is my Mercedes contract worth for next season?" "About £40 million, Lewis." "Same as this year. And if I gave it all away, what would that mean for me financially?" There was a long pause on the line. "All of it? Lewis, are you serious? Just answer the question, please." "Well, you've invested wisely over the years. You have your other businesses, endorsements. You wouldn't be poor, but it would be a significant portion of your wealth. May I ask why you're considering this?" Lewis walked to his window and looked out at the harbor filled with luxury yachts. "I made a promise a long time ago. It's time I kept it." Over the next months, Lewis met secretly with lawyers, educators, and racing experts. He visited abandoned factories and warehouses across England. He had long conversations with his father, Anthony, about their early days in racing. No one in the Formula One world knew what Lewis was planning. There were rumors he might retire or start his own team. Some thought he might be sick. His social media, usually active, went quiet, except for race updates. The night before the press conference where he would announce giving away his salary, Lewis sat alone in his hotel room in London. On the table was a folder containing plans for Hamilton Horizons, his vision for a racing academy that would be free for talented kids who couldn't afford to race. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for not forgetting." Z. Lewis smiled. So Zach would be there after all. As he turned off the light to sleep, Lewis felt something he hadn't felt in years. The pure, simple joy of the 8-year-old boy who just wanted to race and wanted everyone else to have that chance too. Tomorrow, the world would start to understand. But they wouldn't know the full story yet. especially not about what happened that rainy day at the track when they were teenagers. That secret had stayed between Louis and Zach for almost 20 years. The morning after receiving Zach's text, Louis woke up early. Today wasn't a race day, but it felt just as important. Before heading to the press conference where he would announce giving away his salary, Louis had somewhere else to be. His silver Mercedes pulled up outside Oakfield Primary School in East London. The school sat in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. Children played in a small concrete yard surrounded by tall apartment buildings covered in graffiti. Louis wasn't wearing his racing gear or designer clothes today. Just jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and a baseball cap. He wanted the kids to see him as a person, not just a famous face. The headmaster, Mrs. Peterson, met him at the door. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Hamilton," she said. "The children are so excited." "Please, call me Louis," he smiled. "And thank you for letting me visit without the media knowing." Louis had been doing these quiet school visits for years. No cameras, no publicity, just Louis talking to kids about dreams and hard work. But today's visit felt different. Today, he was looking for something. In the school assembly hall, 30 children sat cross-legged on the floor, their eyes wide as Louis walked in. He talked about growing up in Stevenage, about his dad working 3 jobs, about facing bullies and racism. The children listened to every word. "The most important thing I've learned," Louis told them, "is that talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. Some of the most talented people never get their chance to shine." A small hand shot up. It belonged to a girl with dark, curly hair pulled into puffy pigtails. Her uniform was clean but worn at the edges. "Yes?" Louis pointed to her. "My name is Maya," she said. "I want to be an engineer and design race cars, but my mom says people like me don't get to do that stuff." Louis knelt down to her level. "Why does she say that, Maya?" Maya shrugged. "Because we don't have money for special schools, and because there aren't many black women engineers." The honesty of her answer hit Louis hard. Here was another child, like Zach years ago, whose dreams were being limited not by talent, but by circumstance. "Can I see your work?" Louis asked. "Do you draw cars?" Maya nodded excitedly and ran to her backpack. She pulled out a worn sketchbook and handed it to Louis. Inside were detailed drawings of race cars, each one labeled with aerodynamic features and engine specifications. The drawings were remarkably good, especially for a 10-year-old. "These are amazing," Louis said, genuinely impressed. "You understand downforce already?" Maya nodded. "I watch all the races and read books from the library." After the school visit, Louis sat in his car for a long time, looking at Maya's sketchbook, which she had insisted he borrow. Her words echoed in his mind. "People like me don't get to do that stuff." It was what Zach might have said all those years ago if he'd been old enough to understand the barriers facing him. That night, Louis couldn't sleep. He paced his hotel room, thinking about Maya, about Zach, about all the talented kids who never got their shot. His phone rang at midnight. His assistant, Rosie. "Sorry to call so late, Louis, but you asked me to let you know immediately if I found anything about Zachary Taylor from Stevenage." Louis sat up straight. "Did you find him?" "I think so. There's a Zachary James Taylor who works as a biomedical engineer at a company called Meditech in Cambridge. He's 41, which matches the age of the boy you knew. He graduated from Imperial College London with honors." "Send me everything you have," Louis said, his heart racing. "And Rosie, I need you to do something else for me. Find out everything you can about starting a racing academy. Costs, facilities, legal requirements, everything." "A racing academy?" Rosie sounded surprised. Yes, and I don't want anyone else to know about this yet. Not the team, not the sponsors, no one. The next morning, Lewis stood at the podium at Mercedes headquarters, announcing he would give away his entire salary. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, Lewis scanned the room, looking for a face he hadn't seen in decades. But Zach wasn't there. After the press conference, Lewis slipped away from the media and made his way to a small cafe 3 blocks from the Mercedes building. A man sat alone at a corner table, wearing a navy blue jacket and glasses. He looked up as Lewis approached. For a moment, neither spoke. The boy from the kart track was now a middle-aged man with flecks of gray in his hair. But Lewis would have recognized those eyes anywhere. "You didn't come to the press conference," Lewis said, sitting down. Zach shook his head. "I thought it would be better to meet privately." "It's been a long time, Lewis." 25 years since the kart track. 18 years since the accident, Zach finished quietly. They fell silent, both remembering that rainy day when they were teenagers, a day no one else knew about. "Why did you disappear after calling me?" Lewis asked. "I tried to call you back. I wasn't sure if I should get involved," Zach admitted. "My life is complicated. I have a family now. 2 kids." "Do they race?" Lewis asked. Zach laughed softly. "No, can't afford it. Some things never change." Lewis nodded, understanding. "That's why I'm giving away my salary. I'm starting a racing academy for kids who can't afford it. No fees, no barriers, just talent." Zach looked surprised. "Because of that promise you made when we were kids? You actually remembered that?" "I never forgot," Lewis said. "But the academy is only part of it. I want you to work with me, Zach. You're an engineer. You understand racing. You have the talent you never got to use." Zach stared at his coffee cup. "I don't know, Lewis. I build medical equipment now. It's important work." "This is important too," Lewis insisted. "Think about all the kids like Maya." "Maya?" Lewis showed him the sketchbook. "A girl I met yesterday. Brilliant engineering mind. No opportunities. There are thousands of kids like her, like you were. We can change that." As Zach flipped through Maya's drawings, Lewis continued. "The academy will need a technical director, someone who understands both the engineering and what these kids are facing. You're offering me a job?" Zach looked up, surprised. "I'm offering you the chance we should have had together," Lewis said. "Partners, like we talked about that day before the accident." Zach's eyes filled with tears. "No one knows what you did for me that day, Lewis. No one knows you saved, and no one needs to know," Lewis interrupted gently. "That's between us." The 2 men sat in silence for a moment, years of shared history hanging between them. Finally, Zach extended his hand. "Partners." As they shook hands, Lewis felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The promise he'd made under the stars was finally taking shape. What no one else would know, until Lewis was ready to tell them, was that his connection to Zach went far deeper than a childhood friendship. It involved a debt that could never be repaid with money, only with purpose. And that was the real reason Lewis Hamilton was giving away £40 million. That evening, Lewis invited Zach to his hotel suite. Spread across the large dining table were stacks of papers, building plans, and financial reports. "I've been working on this for months," Lewis explained. "But it's been in my heart for decades." Zach picked up a document titled Hamilton Horizons. Mission statement. "Hamilton Horizons?" he asked. Lewis nodded. "That's what I'm calling it. A place where talent meets opportunity, where the horizon is the same distance away for everyone, no matter where they start from." The plans were impressive, Lewis wanted to build 5 racing academies across the world, starting with one in the UK, then expanding to Africa, South America, Asia, and North America. Each academy would offer free training to talented young drivers who couldn't afford traditional racing paths. "The 40 million from my salary is just the beginning," Lewis explained. "I've been talking to sponsors, other drivers, team owners. Many want to help." "This is incredible," Zach said, flipping through architectural drawings of the main UK facility. "But why keep it secret until now?" Lewis walked to the window, looking out at the London skyline. "Because I needed to be sure I could do it right. And because—" He hesitated. "I wanted to find you first." "Why me?" Zach asked. "You're Lewis Hamilton. You could have any engineer in the world." Lewis turned back to face him. "Because you understand both sides, the talent and the barriers. And because I owe you." "You don't owe me anything," Zach said quietly. "If anything, I owe you." Both men fell silent, the memory of that rainy day at Donington Park hanging between them. Lewis had been 17, Zach 16. They'd reconnected by chance at a Formula Renault testing day. Zach wasn't driving. He was working as a mechanic's assistant, learning about cars since he couldn't afford to race them. During Lewis's test, a freak storm hit the track. His car had hydroplaned, spun, and hit the barrier. The impact ruptured the fuel line. What happened next had never been reported in any newspaper or racing history book. "We should tell people what happened," Zach said now, breaking the silence. "It would make your donation even more powerful if they knew why." Lewis shook his head. "No, this isn't about me looking like a hero. This is about the kids." A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Rosie, Lewis's assistant, with Angela, his physiotherapist and trusted friend. Both had been helping with the academy plans. "We found a perfect location," Rosie announced, spreading out maps on the table. "An old factory outside Birmingham, 20 acres of land, good transport links, and the building can be converted easily." Angela added, "And I've been talking to sports psychologists who want to help. These kids will need mental support as well as driving skills." As they discussed details, Lewis watched Zach examining the technical specifications for the training simulators. The look of excitement on his face confirmed Lewis had made the right choice. "We need to move quickly," Lewis said. "I want the first academy running within 6 months." 6 months? Zach looked up, shocked. "That's impossible." "That's what they said about a black kid from a council estate becoming a Formula One champion," Lewis replied with a smile. "I like impossible." Over the next weeks, Lewis maintained his racing schedule while secretly moving the academy plans forward. He visited potential sites wearing disguises. He met with educators late at night after race meetings. He reviewed building plans between practice sessions. His racing team noticed something was different. During the Spanish Grand Prix weekend, his performance engineer confronted him. "Your mind's not on the track, Lewis. What's going on?" "Just trust me," Lewis replied. "It's something important." The distraction showed in his results. For the first time in years, Lewis went 3 races without a podium finish. Rumors began circulating in the paddock. Was Lewis Hamilton losing his edge? Was he sick? Was he planning to retire? After a particularly bad qualifying session in Monaco, where he almost crashed into the barrier at Saint-Devote, Lewis sat alone in his driver room. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team boss, knocked and entered without waiting. "Lewis, we need to talk," Toto said, his Austrian accent more pronounced when he was concerned. "Whatever is happening in your personal life is affecting your driving. The team deserves to know." Lewis looked at his longtime boss and friend. Toto had always supported him through championships and controversies. He deserved the truth. "Sit down, Toto," Lewis said. "It's time I told you what I'm really doing with my salary." For the next hour, Lewis explained the academy plans. He showed Toto the designs, the educational programs, the technical innovations Zach was developing. When he finished, Toto was silent for a long moment. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he finally asked. "Mercedes could have helped." "I needed to do this myself," Lewis explained, "to know it was my promise being kept, not a corporate project." Toto nodded slowly. "And this childhood friend? This Zach? He's that important to you?" Lewis met Toto's eyes. "He saved my life, Toto. Literally. Not many people would run toward a burning race car." Understanding dawned on Toto's face. The Donington test. There were rumors about that day, but no official report. "We kept it quiet," Lewis said. "Zach didn't want attention, but he pulled me out seconds before the car exploded. I'd have died without him." Toto stood and placed a hand on Lewis's shoulder. "Then we must help you build this academy. Not just Mercedes, the whole Formula One community. Many will want to support this cause." "Thank you," Lewis said, relieved. "But please, keep the full story private for now. When the time is right, I'll share everything." That night, Lewis called Zach with the news. "Toto's on board," he said. "Things are going to move much faster now." "That's great," Zach replied. "But Lewis, I've been thinking people will eventually ask questions about us, about what happened." "Let them ask," Lewis said. "We'll tell the whole story at the right moment. For now, let's focus on building something that will change lives." After they hung up, Lewis opened his laptop and looked at the latest designs for Hamilton Horizons. The main building featured a wall with the words, "Dreams don't have price tags." The press still had no idea what was coming. They thought Lewis Hamilton's donation was just a generous gesture from a wealthy athlete. They had no idea it was the fulfillment of a promise made by a little boy under the stars, a promise that had gained new meaning the day his friend saved him from certain death. The Formula One world loves gossip, and Lewis Hamilton's strange behavior gave them plenty to talk about. As the season continued, his unusual mistakes on track fueled endless speculation. "Hamilton seems distracted," said TV commentator Martin Brundle during the French Grand Prix. "It's not like him to miss braking points." Lewis qualified 6th, his worst position in years. After the session, reporters crowded around him in the media pen. "Lewis, you're making mistakes we haven't seen from you since your rookie days," one journalist pointed out. "Some say you've lost your edge since announcing you're giving away your salary. How do you respond to that?" Lewis wiped sweat from his brow. The truth was, he'd been up until 3 a.m. reviewing plans for the Academy's driver selection process. "My focus hasn't changed," he said calmly. "Every driver has tough weekends." But the questions continued at every race. When Lewis spun during practice in Austria, his teammate George Russell was asked if he thought Lewis was mentally checked out. "Lewis is still one of the best drivers in the world," George defended him. "Whatever he's dealing with, I'm sure he'll bounce back stronger." Behind closed doors, tension was building. Mercedes executives worried about the impact on their brand if their star driver's performance continued to slip. Sponsors called, asking if Lewis was planning to retire. Only Toto Wolff knew the truth, and he kept Lewis's secret, even as the EE pressure mounted. The situation reached a breaking point at the Monaco Grand Prix. During qualifying, Lewis misjudged the entry to the famous hairpin turn and nearly hit the barrier, a mistake no top driver should make at Monaco. He qualified 10th. Social media exploded with theories. Hamilton's done. Time to retire. Lost his edge. Is Lewis sick? Something's clearly wrong. Concerned for Lewis. Giving away his money has affected his hunger. No motivation left. Sad to see. In the team garage. After qualifying, Lewis sat alone, still in his racing suit. Angela, his physiotherapist, brought him water. "You can't keep burning the candle at both ends," she said gently. "The academy planning is taking too much of your energy." Lewis sighed. "I know, but we're so close to breaking ground on the first facility. I can't slow down now." "Then maybe it's time to go public with the full plan," Angela suggested. "Let people understand what you're really doing." Lewis shook his head. "Not yet. Not until we're ready to show them something real." After she left, Lewis checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Zach. When he called back, Zach's voice was excited. "We got approval from the Birmingham City Council. We can start construction next week." Despite his poor qualifying performance, Lewis smiled. "That's the best news I've had all day." "But there's something else," Zach continued, his tone changing. "Journalists have been asking questions about me. Someone leaked that you're working with an old friend from Stevenage. They're digging into my background." Lewis frowned. "How did they find out?" "I don't know, but it's only a matter of time before they discover the Donington incident." After they hung up, Lewis paced his driver room. The Monaco race was tomorrow. He needed to focus. But his mind kept returning to the academy, to Zach, to their shared past. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Toto. "Lewis, are you okay?" he asked, concern evident on his face. "I'm fine, Toto." "No, you're not," Toto said bluntly. "You nearly crashed today. This can't continue." Lewis ran a hand over his face. "I know. It's just everything's happening at once." "Then let me help more," Toto insisted. "The team can handle some of the academy planning. You need to be a driver right now." Lewis looked at his boss, his friend, and nodded slowly. "You're right. After Monaco, I'll let you bring in more people." The next day, the race went better than expected. Lewis drove carefully, strategically, and finished 4th, a remarkable recovery from 10th on the grid. In the cool-down room before the podium ceremony, Max Verstappen, who had won the race, approached Lewis. "Better driving today," Max said in his direct Dutch manner. "But still, not the Hamilton I know. What's going on with you?" Lewis gave a small smile. "I'm just seeing the bigger picture now." Max raised an eyebrow, but didn't push further. As Lewis left the track that evening, a reporter shouted one final question. "Lewis, are you okay?" Lewis stopped and turned. The cameras focused on his face as he answered, "I'm better than okay. I'm exactly where I need to be." Back at his hotel, Lewis made a phone call to a number only he and Zach knew. "It's almost time," he said quietly. "Is everything ready?" The voice on the other end confirmed, "Yes, Operation Horizon is ready to launch." Lewis hung up the phone and looked out at the twinkling lights of Monaco Harbor. Operation Horizon, the name Zach had given to their plan, was no longer just a dream. It was about to become reality. But first, Lewis needed to have the hardest conversation of his career. The next morning, he requested a private meeting with Toto Wolff at the Mercedes Hospitality Suite. When he arrived, Lewis was surprised to find not just Toto, but also the team's chief financial officer and legal director. "I hope you don't mind," Toto said, gesturing to the others. "If we're going to discuss what I think we are, they should be here too." Lewis nodded and took a seat. For a moment, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the little boy racing karts in Stevenage to becoming the most successful Formula One driver in history. Every step of that journey, people had helped him. Now it was his turn to help others. "I've made a decision," Lewis began. "I'm going forward with giving away my entire salary for this season." The financial officer leaned forward. "Lewis, we're talking about £40 million. Have you fully considered the implications?" "I have," Lewis replied calmly. "I've been planning this for over a year." "But why all of it?" the legal director asked. "You could make a significant impact with much less." Lewis took a deep breath. This was the moment to share more of the truth, if not all of it. "When I was a kid, racing was everything to me. But I saw so many talented children who never got their chance because they couldn't afford it. One boy in particular." Lewis paused, thinking of Zach. "One boy could have been a champion, maybe even better than me. But his family couldn't afford racing." "This is about more than money," Lewis continued. "It's about changing the system, breaking down the barriers that keep talented kids out of motorsport." Toto, who already knew more than the others, asked, "And you're sure this Hamilton Horizons Academy is the right approach?" Lewis nodded. "We've spent months developing the plan. Free training for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, state-of-the-art facilities, education alongside racing. The first academy in Birmingham is almost ready to break ground." The financial officer looked concerned. "Have you consulted with your personal financial advisors? £40 million is—" "I know exactly what £40 million is," Lewis interrupted, his voice firm but not angry. "It's a life-changing amount of money. That's the point. It's going to change lives." "Lewis has been smart with his money," Toto added. "This isn't going to bankrupt him." The legal director slid a folder across the table. "We've prepared some alternative proposals, ways you could structure this as a foundation, spread the donation over years, reduce your tax burden." Lewis pushed the folder back without opening it. "I appreciate the concern, but my mind is made up. I want to do this now, all at once. It has to be this way." "May I ask why?" the financial officer pressed. Lewis thought about the promise he'd made under the stars, about Zach pulling him from the burning car at Donington, about Maya and her drawings of race cars. "Because some promises need to be kept," he said simply. "And because I owe a debt that can only be repaid this way." The meeting continued for another hour, with the team executives trying to convince Lewis to reconsider. He listened patiently, but his resolve remained unshaken. Finally, Toto held up his hand to stop the discussion. "Lewis has made his decision. Our job now is to support him." After the others left, Toto poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from Lewis. "You know, when you first announced this, I thought maybe you were having some kind of crisis," Toto admitted. "Midlife, identity, something." Lewis smiled. "Just the opposite. I've never been more clear about who I am and what I need to do." "Your father called me," Toto said. "He's worried about you." Lewis wasn't surprised. Anthony Hamilton had always been protective of his son, especially when it came to financial matters. After all, he'd worked those 3 jobs to fund Lewis's early racing career. "I need to call him," Lewis said. "He deserves to hear the full plan from me." That evening, Lewis FaceTimed his dad from his apartment. Anthony's face appeared on the screen, concern evident in his eyes. "Son, are you sure about this?" Anthony asked without preamble. "You worked so hard for that money." "I'm sure, Dad," Lewis said. "Remember how you always told me to remember where I came from? This is me remembering." "But your whole salary? Why not just part of it?" Lewis smiled. "Remember when I was 8 and I met that boy Zach at the track? You let him drive my kart, Anthony nodded slowly. I remember. You two became friends that day. What you don't know is that I saw him again years later, Lewis continued. When I was testing Formula Renault at Donington, Lewis told his father the story he'd never shared before about the crash, the fire, and how Zach had saved his life. He pulled me out seconds before the car exploded, Lewis finished. He risked his life for mine. Anthony was silent for a long moment. Why didn't you ever tell me? We agreed to keep it quiet. Zach didn't want attention. He just wanted to work with cars since he couldn't race them. And now? Is he part of this academy plan? Lewis nodded. He's going to be the technical director. Dad, he's brilliant. The simulators he's designing will change driver training forever. Anthony's expression softened. Well, if this means that much to you, if it's about keeping a promise and repaying a debt, it is, Lewis said. And about giving kids like me, like I was, a real chance. Then I'm with you, Anthony said finally. Just like always. As they said their goodbyes, Lewis felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His father's support had always meant everything. To him, the next morning, Lewis woke to news that would accelerate his plans. A British tabloid was running a story headlined, "Who is Lewis Hamilton's mystery friend from Stevenage?" Time was running out. Lewis needed to tell the story his way, before others told it for him. Lewis stared at the tabloid headline on his phone screen. Who is Lewis Hamilton's mystery friend from Stevenage? The article included a blurry photo of Zach leaving Lewis's hotel and speculated wildly about their connection. He immediately called Zach, who had already seen it. They don't know about Donington yet, Zach said, his voice tense. But they're digging. A reporter called my workplace yesterday. We need to move up our timeline, Lewis decided. I'll talk to Toto. Within hours, an emergency meeting was assembled at Mercedes headquarters. Toto, Rosie, Angela, and the communications team gathered around a conference table. The British Grand Prix is next weekend at Silverstone, Lewis said. That's our new target for the full announcement. Silverstone? Toto looked concerned. That's the biggest race of the year for us. The press will be all over this. Exactly, Lewis nodded. It's the perfect stage, and it's where this story belongs. At home, in Britain. The communications director frowned. But the Birmingham facility won't be ready to show by then. We planned for a proper unveiling with the building at least partially complete. We'll use the digital models and the plans, Lewis insisted. What matters is getting ahead of the story before the tabloids twist it. The team worked frantically over the next days. Lewis split his time between physical training for the race and preparation. For the announcement, Zach worked remotely, finalizing technical specifications and preparing his part of the presentation. Meanwhile, the media frenzy around Lewis's initial announcement about giving away his salary continued to grow. Theories multiplied daily. Hamilton preparing for retirement. Secret health crisis forcing Hamilton's hand. Tax scheme gone wrong. Hamilton's desperate move. Former F1 champion Nico Rosberg, once Lewis's teammate and fierce rival, surprised everyone by defending him on a popular motorsport podcast. I know Lewis, Nico said. He doesn't do things for show. If he's giving away his salary, there's a real purpose behind it. We should respect that and wait for him to share more when he's ready. This unexpected support from Rosberg made headlines of its own. Other drivers began voicing their respect for Lewis's decision, even while admitting they were confused by it. Social media became a battleground. Some fans praised Lewis's generosity. Others questioned his motives. Conspiracy theories flourished. In the vacuum of information, Lewis stepped back from social media entirely, something he rarely did. he needed to focus. 4 days before the British Grand Prix, Lewis and Zach met secretly at a factory outside Birmingham, the future site of the first Hamilton Horizons Academy. The building was an abandoned automotive plant, its bones still good but needing extensive renovation. As they walked through the empty space, Lewis could already envision what it would become. Simulators here, physical training area there, classrooms. Upstairs, workshop in the back. The contractors are ready to start as soon as we give the word, Zach said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. But Lewis, I'm still not sure about going public with the Donington story. Lewis stopped walking and turned to his friend. Why not? Zach shrugged uncomfortably. It makes you look like you're only doing this because you owe me. Like it's about paying a debt, not really about helping kids. But that's not true, Lewis said firmly. Yes, what happened at Donington is part of it. But this was always about keeping my promise, the one I made when we were kids. Zach smiled slightly. Under the stars. I still can't believe you remember that. Of course I do, Lewis said. That promise shaped my whole life. A noise at the factory entrance startled them both. They turned to see a man with a camera rushing away. Damn it, Lewis muttered. We've been followed. By that evening, new photos were circulating online showing Lewis and Zach at the factory. The caption read, "Exclusive. Hamilton's secret project revealed." Lewis's phone rang as he was driving back to London. It was Toto. The photos are everywhere, Toto said without greeting. We need to make a statement tonight. No, Lewis replied, firmly. No statements, no explanations. Let them wonder for a few more days. We stick to the plan. Full announcement after Silverstone. When Lewis arrived at the Silverstone circuit on Thursday for the race weekend, the media attention was unlike anything he'd experienced before. Every journalist wanted to know about the factory, about Zach, about the money. Lewis answered every question the same way. You'll understand everything soon. Surprisingly, the pressure seemed to focus Lewis on his driving. In Friday practice, he was fastest in both sessions. On Saturday, he secured pole position with a stunning lap that left his competitors nearly half a second behind. In the post-qualifying press conference, a reporter asked, "Has resolving your personal situation helped your driving this weekend?" Lewis smiled. Nothing's resolved yet. But yes, I feel lighter. Like I'm racing for something more important than just a trophy. That night, Lewis couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would change everything. The race, yes, he always wanted to win at his home circuit. But more importantly, the announcement afterward. He'd arranged for a special press conference immediately following the race, regardless of the result. Zach would be there. Maya from the East London school would be there too, wearing a specially made Mercedes team shirt. Everything was in place. His phone chimed with a text from an unexpected source. Whatever you're planning tomorrow, I know it's going to be special. Racing is lucky to have you. MV Max Verstappen, his biggest rival on track, reaching out with support. Lewis felt a wave of gratitude. Morning came quickly. As Lewis went through his pre-race routine, the stretching with Angela, the music playlist, the quiet meditation, he felt unusually calm. Today wasn't just about racing, it was about fulfilling a purpose much bigger than winning. The weather forecast had predicted sunshine, but as Lewis looked out his motorhome window, dark clouds were gathering. Rain, his favorite racing conditions. It felt like a sign. It's going to be a good day, he told Angela as she worked on his shoulders. Dachi, rain? She asked. Everything, Lewis replied. Everything feels right today. As he put on his helmet and prepared to walk to the grid, Lewis thought about the long journey from that little boy in Stevenage to this moment. So many people had helped him along the way. Now he would help others. Win or lose today's race. Lewis. Hamilton was about to change the face of motorsport forever. And finally, the world would know why. The crowd at Silverstone roared as Lewis Hamilton walked onto the grid. Despite the darkening sky and the threat of rain, fans packed the grandstands, many waving British flags. This was his home race, the circuit where he'd won a record 8 times before. Today could be number 9, but Lewis knew that, regardless of the race outcome, this would be a day to remember. "Looks like rain in about 20 minutes, his race engineer Bono said through the radio as Lewis settled into the cockpit of his Mercedes. "Perfect," Lewis replied, while other drivers dreaded rain. Lewis thrived in wet conditions. His smooth driving style and incredible feel for grip made him nearly unbeatable when the track was slippery. As he waited for the formation lap to begin, Lewis found himself thinking not about race strategy, but about the faces that would be watching him today. His father Anthony, sitting with his stepmother Linda in the Mercedes garage. Zach, waiting nervously in a private room of the Silverstone wing. Maya, the young girl from East London who had no idea why she'd been invited to the race today, only that she would get to meet her hero afterward. "Focus, Lewis," he whispered to himself. "Race first, then the rest." The 5 red lights came on one by one, then went out. 20 powerful Formula One cars launched forward, engines screaming. Lewis got a perfect start, maintaining his pole position. Into the first corner. Max Verstappen in the Red Bull slotted in behind him, followed by Charles Leclerc's Ferrari. The top 3 quickly pulled away from the rest of the field. On lap 7, the first raindrops began to fall. Lightly at first, then heavier. Some drivers immediately dove into the pits for intermediate rain tires. Lewis stayed out, feeling that the track wasn't wet enough yet. "Conditions?" Bono asked over the radio. "Manageable," Lewis replied, expertly guiding his car through the increasingly slippery Maggots and Beckett sequence. "I can stay out 2 more laps." This was the Lewis Hamilton that fans knew and rivals feared. Calculated, precise, pushing the limits, but never beyond them. When he finally pitted for rain tires, he emerged still in the lead. But Max had closed the gap by taking a risk and pitting earlier. Now just 3 seconds separated them with 30 laps to go. The rain intensified. Visibility worsened. 2 cars slid off at Stowe Corner, bringing out yellow flags. In these treacherous conditions, many drivers would back off, play it safe. Not Lewis. Not today. While maintaining his lead, Lewis's mind drifted briefly to the press conference that would follow the race. Everything was prepared. The presentation, the announcement, Zach's speech, Maya's role in the ceremony. A sudden crosswind at the end of the hangar straight nearly sent Lewis's car into a spin. He caught it with lightning-fast reflexes, but the momentary loss of focus had cost him time. "Max is 1.8 seconds behind," Bono warned. "Stay focused." Lewis shook his head inside his helmet. He couldn't afford to think about anything but the next corner, the next lap. The academy, Zach, the announcement, all of that had to wait. With 15 laps remaining, Max made his move. Using DRS down the Wellington Straight, the Red Bull pulled alongside the Mercedes. The 2 cars raced side by side through Luffield, neither driver willing to back down. Fans held their breath as the rivals, separated by mere inches, approached. Copse, one of the fastest corners on the calendar. Last year, their battle here had ended in a controversial collision. This time, Lewis yielded just enough space. Max took the lead by half a car length. The Dutch driver's orange-clad fans erupted. In cheers! "He's got more grip on the outside," Lewis reported calmly to his team. "I'll get him back." 3 laps later, a dry line began to appear on parts of the track. Lewis felt the changing conditions before anyone else. This was his chance. He closed the gap to Max, studying the Red Bull's movements, looking for weaknesses. On the entry to Vale, he noticed Max struggling with understeer, the front of his car pushing wide. "Tires are coming back to me," Lewis reported. "I'm going to make a move." For the next 5 laps, the 2 champions fought an incredible battle. Lewis would get close through the fast sections, while Max defended brilliantly in the braking zones. Foes? Crowd was on their feet regardless of which driver they supported. This was racing at its finest. 2 of the greatest drivers in history pushing each other to the limit in challenging conditions. With 7 laps to go, Lewis saw his opportunity. As they approached Abbey Corner, he feinted to the outside, causing Max to defend that line. Then, in a move of breathtaking bravery, Lewis switched back to the inside, braking incredibly late. The Mercedes briefly skated across the damp track, millimeters from disaster, before Lewis regained control and powered past the Red Bull. "Yes," Toto Wolff's voice came over the radio, a rare interruption from the team boss. "Brilliant, Lewis." Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari was closing too, turning the battle into a 3-way fight. The final laps were a masterclass in wet weather, driving from all 3, but Lewis maintained a small gap, his experience at Silverstone proving decisive. When he crossed the finish line first, the British crowd erupted. 9th victory at Silverstone, 94th career win. But today, those numbers didn't matter to Lewis. As he took the checkered flag, Lewis spoke into his radio. "This one is for all the kids who never got their chance. And tomorrow, you'll all understand why." The cryptic message set social media ablaze. What did he mean? What would happen tomorrow? In Parc Fermé, where the top 3 drivers park after the race, Max Verstappen was the first to congratulate Lewis. "Incredible driving," the Dutch champion said, genuinely impressed. "You were on another level today." "Thanks, Max," Lewis replied. "That means a lot." On the podium, something unusual happened. When handed the bottle of champagne, Lewis didn't spray it as tradition dictated. Instead, he stood solemnly, looking out at the crowd, the bottle untouched in his hand. Charles Leclerc and Max exchanged confused glances, but respected Lewis's mood, moderating their own celebrations. After the anthem played and the trophies were presented, Lewis finally stepped forward to address the crowd. "Thank you all for your amazing support today," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet circuit. "This victory is special to me, but not because it's my 9th at Silverstone." He paused, looking toward the sky that was now clearing, hints of sunshine breaking through the clouds. "All my life, I've been fortunate to have people who believed in me, who gave me opportunities. Not everyone gets those chances. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not." The crowd listened intently, sensing this was more than a typical post-race speech. "I want to invite everyone to join me tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, right here at Silverstone. I'll be making an announcement that I believe will change the future of our sport." As Lewis left the podium, questions shouted by journalists went unanswered. He had said all he wanted to say, for now. In the Mercedes garage, Toto greeted him with a hug. "Perfect driving, perfect timing. Everything is ready for tomorrow?" Lewis nodded. "Zach is finalizing his speech. Maya is so excited she can barely sit still. The presentation is ready. His phone buzzed with a message from Zach. "Great drive. Ready when you are." Tomorrow, at last, the world would learn about Hamilton Horizons. They would hear about a promise made by a boy under the Stevenage stars. They would learn about a life-saving act of courage at Donington Park, and Lewis Hamilton would finally reveal why he was giving away £40 million. The morning after his Silverstone victory dawned, clear and bright. By 8 o'clock, fans and media were already gathering outside the Silverstone wing, the circuit's modern glass-fronted conference center. No one knew exactly what to expect, but Lewis Hamilton's announcement had created a buzz unlike anything in recent Formula One memory. Inside, Lewis paced nervously in a private room. He wore a simple black suit. No flashy jewelry or designer logos today. This wasn't about fashion or sponsorships. This was about something much more important. "Are you ready?" Angela asked, handing him a bottle of water. Lewis nodded. "I've been ready for this my whole life, I think." In another room, Zach Taylor adjusted his tie in the mirror. The former kart racer, the boy who never got his chance, was about to step into the spotlight alongside the most famous racing driver in the world. His hands trembled slightly. A knock at the door. "Mr. Taylor? They're ready for you." At precisely 10 o'clock, Lewis walked onto the stage in the main conference hall. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. The room was packed beyond capacity, with journalists standing along the walls and sitting in the aisles. Lewis approached the microphone and waited for the room to quiet. "Good morning," he began. "Thank you all for coming today. As promised, I'm here to explain why I've decided to give away my entire salary for this season." He paused, looking out at the sea of expectant faces. "But this isn't just about money. It's about fulfilling a promise I made when I was 8 years old. It's about repaying a debt that can never truly be repaid. And most importantly, it's about changing the future of motorsport." Lewis gestured to a large screen behind him, where the words Hamilton Horizons appeared alongside an architectural rendering of a modern building. "Today, I'm announcing the creation of Hamilton Horizons, a free racing academy for talented kids from disadvantaged backgrounds." Murmurs spread through the crowd as Lewis continued. "Most of you know my story. I grew up in Stevenage, in a normal family. My dad worked 3 jobs to support my racing. We struggled, we sacrificed. I was lucky. I had people who believed in me." Lewis clicked to the next slide, showing a map with 5 locations marked across different continents. Hamilton Horizons will start with 5 academies around the world, in the UK, Africa, South America, Asia, and North America. Each facility will provide complete training, from karting to engineering to simulator work, all completely free of charge. The journalists scribbled frantically. Photographers captured every expression on Lewis's face. This was far bigger than anyone had expected. "My entire salary, all £40 million, will fund the initial construction and first-year operations. But I'm happy to announce that other Formula One drivers, teams, and sponsors have already pledged additional support." Lewis smiled as he clicked to a slide showing the logos of Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, and other F1 teams. When I shared my vision with the Formula One community, the response was overwhelming. Together, we've already secured funding for the next 5 years. As Lewis continued explaining the details of the program, how students would be selected, what training they would receive, how they would progress toward professional racing, the audience remained spellbound. This wasn't just a charitable donation. It was a complete reimagining of how racing talent could be discovered and developed. "But there's more to this story," Lewis said, his tone shifting. something personal that I've never shared publicly." The room fell silent. When I was 8 years old, I met a boy at the kart track. His name was Zach Taylor. He had natural talent, maybe more than me, but his family couldn't afford racing. We shared my kart that day, became friends. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever made it in racing, I would make sure kids like Zach got their chance. Lewis took a deep breath. What I didn't tell you was that I met Zach again when we were teenagers. I was testing a Formula Renault car at Donington Park. Zach was working as a mechanic's assistant since he couldn't afford to race. Lewis paused, emotion visible on his face. That day, it started raining heavily. I crashed badly in the fast section of the track. The impact ruptured the fuel line. The car caught fire almost immediately. Gasps came from the audience. No one had ever heard this story before. I was trapped in the cockpit, my harness jammed, and everyone ran away from the burning car, except one person. Zach ran toward it. Lewis's voice cracked slightly. He pulled me out seconds before the car exploded. He risked his life to save mine, and we agreed to keep it private. No media, no attention, just between us. The room was utterly silent now. Journalists, too, stunned to even type. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Zachary Taylor, my childhood friend, the boy who deserved a racing career, and the man who saved my life. Lewis gestured to the side of the stage, where Zach walked out, looking nervous but determined. The audience erupted in applause as the two men embraced. Zach approached the microphone. "Thank you, Lewis. I never expected any of this. What happened at Donington? I just did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," Lewis corrected. "You." Zach smiled. Lewis and I lost touch after that day, each going our separate ways. I became an engineer, working on medical equipment, ironically, making devices that help burn victims. He paused, gathering himself. When Lewis called me last year and told me about his plan for Hamilton Horizons, I thought he was crazy. Giving away his entire salary? Building racing academies around the world? But that's Lewis. He doesn't think small. Zach turned to Lewis with genuine admiration. What Lewis isn't telling you is that these academies won't just train drivers. They'll train engineers, mechanics, strategists, creating pathways for kids from all backgrounds to enter every aspect of motorsport. Lewis nodded. Zach will serve as technical director for Hamilton Horizons. His experience in both racing and engineering makes him the perfect person to lead our technical program. Photographs of the Birmingham facility appeared on the screen, showing the renovations already underway. Construction begins next week, Lewis announced. We expect to welcome our first students in 6 months. Lewis then looked toward the back of the room. There's one more person I'd like you to meet today. A young girl with dark, curly hair walked nervously down the center aisle, wearing a Mercedes team shirt with Maya printed on the back. "This is Maya," Lewis said as she joined him on stage. "I met her at a school in East London a few months ago. Maya wants to be an engineer and design race cars. When I saw her drawings, I knew she had a special talent." Maya waved shyly at the cameras. "Maya will be among the first students at Hamilton Horizons," Lewis continued. "And one day, I believe she'll be designing Formula One cars." The young girl beamed with pride as Lewis put his arm around her shoulders. "This is what Hamilton Horizons is about," Lewis said. "Finding the Mayas and the Zachs of the world, the brilliant minds and talents that might otherwise never get their chance." Lewis looked out at the audience, his eyes shining with emotion. "I'm alive today because of Zach." Because a boy who never got to race still loved the sport enough to work as a mechanic's helper. Because he was brave enough to run toward danger when everyone else ran away. Lewis turned to Zach. "I can never repay you for saving my life, but together we can save thousands of dreams." The crowd rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Even hardened journalists who prided themselves on their objectivity were wiping away tears. As the applause continued, Maya stepped forward and handed Lewis a framed drawing, a detailed sketch of a race car with his number 44. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "Dreams don't have price tags." Lewis held up the drawing for everyone to see. "These words will appear on the wall of every Hamilton Horizons Academy," he announced. "Because talent shouldn't come with a price tag. Opportunity shouldn't be limited to those who can afford it." In the days that followed, Lewis Hamilton's announcement dominated headlines around the world. The story of Zach's rescue at Donington was verified by witnesses who had kept the secret for years. Former mechanics and officials confirmed seeing a young man pull Lewis from the burning car seconds before it erupted in flames. Donations poured in for Hamilton Horizons from corporations, celebrities, and ordinary fans touched by the story. Other F1 drivers pledged portions of their salaries. Teams offered equipment and expertise. 6 months later, Lewis and Zach stood together at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the first Hamilton Horizons Academy in Birmingham. Maya was there too, now a student in the inaugural class, along with 50 other children from diverse backgrounds. On the main wall of the entrance hall, in large silver letters, were the words, "Dreams don't have price tags." Below them hung 2 framed items side by side, Maya's drawing of the race car and a faded photograph of 2 young boys at a kart track, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning widely at a future only one of them would get to live. Until now. Where are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about kindness, sacrifice, and making dreams possible for others, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content just like this. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family to spread kindness and awareness about how one person's generosity can change countless lives. Remember, as Lewis and Zach showed us, dreams don't have price tags, and sometimes the most meaningful gifts we can give aren't measured in money, but in opportunity. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.